In the 1960s, Gillette, Wyoming was a frontier boomtown. Oil rigs pumped day and night. The streets were dirt and gravel. The bars were full on Friday nights, and the men were as tough as the Wyoming winter. They were the children of the Great Depression and war. My dad, Leon Wandler, was one of those hard-edged men. He was orphaned in Spokane during the Great Depression and grew up on his grandmother's farm in North Dakota. On the isolated farms of the Northern Plains, where machines were valuable and labor was cheap, Dad had a magician's touch with heavy machinery. Even as a teenager, he could take one look at broken-down farm equipment and know how to fix it. After service in the Army, he took his GI benefits and enrolled at the North Dakota College of Science, where he met my mother. She thought he was going to be a doctor, but he was more at home with the grease and the gears of a machine shop than the antiseptic smells of a hospital. In the early 1960s, hauling a trailer and 3 children, they made their way here to the Bugs Young machine shop in Gillette, where Dad worked for $3 an hour. The shop was dark and dirty and deeply in debt, but the oil fields were booming, and Dad saw potential where others saw failure. He enlisted the support of his uncles and his friend Hank Barney and bought the shop. Leon and Hank, L&H Welding and Machine, was born by the side of the tracks in 1964. That was 60 years ago. Dad wouldn't recognize L&H today. He was lucky if he could provide steady work for 5 to 6 workers. Today we employ more than 400 in shops across the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Chile. Dad ran his accounts out of a checkbook. Today our sales are 20 times greater than when Dad ran the company. In 1964, he worked on manual lathes and mills. Today our machinists and welders operate the most sophisticated CNC workstations in the world. In 1964, broken and twisted metal was dumped out of the back of pickup trucks with the hope that Leon could repair it before winter. Today we work on mine shovels and drag lines, aggregate crushers, windmill turbines, and massive hydroelectric components. Wherever the largest steel machines in the world are working, so is L&H. We may have grown tremendously in the last 60 years, but Dad's core values are still at the heart of the company. He had a relentless work ethic, he was passionate about quality, and he was obsessed about innovation. Late at night, he would retreat to a small desk at home and sketch his ideas. That was before L&H had a draftsman or CAD programs. He would hand his pencil drawings with crude measurements to a tradesman and tell him, "Go and make this." He loved the impossible challenges. Good enough was never good enough. Make it better than new, he taught us. Times were good in the 1970s. Hank Barney retired after a few years, and Dad took on new partners. He bought a section of prairie on the south side of Gillette and built a huge new shop that fit the size of his dreams. He rigged it up with these crane systems to move heavy equipment. He could stack 10 oil derricks inside the cavern shop. The month he moved in, the oil market collapsed. Contracts he had relied on to carry the mortgage were canceled overnight. Finished work that represented months of labor piled up behind the shop, abandoned and unpaid for. To survive, Dad laid off workers and put his family to work. My Uncle Rick ran the night shift. My older brother Lee was a talented mechanic. My brother Jeff and I went to work after school and on weekends. I knew from the first time I saw Dad at the lathe that I wanted to make my life in the shop. I dropped out of high school in the middle of my senior year, took the GED exam to graduate, and I went to work full-time in 1984. I was 16 years old when Dad started sending me to the mines to do field work, and 17 when Dad made me the supervisor of this machine shop. He hated to do it. He screamed and yelled that I wasn't ready. He knew I was too young. He had no choice. I was the only tradesman that would work for minimum wage and not complain. When the oil fields collapsed, L&H turned to the coal mines for work. That was the only other place in the Wyoming frontier with big steel, massive steel. Mining shovels alone were 4 stories tall, the drag lines taller than a high-rise building. Dad didn't like working for the mines. The oil companies were small and intimate. He knew the machines, he knew the culture. The coal mines were corporate enterprises. He couldn't make demands on the coal mines, or shake hands with a mine operator at the bar on Friday night. The mine set the terms of work, not Dad, and they insisted that L&H clean up its dismal safety record. Back then, no one in the shop wore safety glasses or steel-toed boots. Most of the workers drank on the job. Everyone smoked. Dad would stand at a lathe with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, squinting to keep the chips from flying into his eyes. He was always bleeding. We used to joke that if Dad had been working, he would be leaking. The mines would have none of it. If we wanted mine contracts, we had to clean up our act. Back in the 1980s, L&H paid the highest workers' comp premiums in Wyoming. Jeff and I went to war with Dad over the drug testing and safety. He was convinced that all the workers would quit, and he was right. Many did. He thought we would go bankrupt. We thought that safety was the only way to keep from going bankrupt. One year, a 27-year-old machinist was nearly killed when he got caught up in a cadet CNC lathe. After that accident, Jeff and I resolved to change. It took us 10 years to create a safe workplace, but L&H now operates the safest heavy industrial shops in the region. The safety campaign was a pivotal moment for L&H. It was during the 1990s, as my dad's health began to fail, that Jeff and I became leaders of the company with our Chief Financial Officer, Jim Kleichman. The last big project I worked on with Dad was the new weld shop. We bought the building and the crane systems at a shipyard auction in Wisconsin, and in true L&H style, we taught ourselves how to rappel from ropes to take the building apart. Dad and I loved technology. It was in our DNA. We would go to auctions and buy new machines because we were fascinated by them. Long before I understood how computer-programmed machining would change our work, I wanted to invest in CNC tools. When I started buying these expensive machine tools behind me, I was thinking about the future, but I didn't have enough local work to pay for them. And we didn't have a sales department to go get the work. It made sense to use a CNC machine to make 1,000 identical parts, but we're a repair shop. Most of the workers on the floor believed that CNCs just weren't suited for the one-off repair jobs. We knew that if we wanted to grow, L&H would have to expand beyond Wyoming. We could still sell quality and innovation. We could build deep relationships based on integrity and service, but we would have to explore the world to do it. We began taking on bigger jobs. We invested in 20 different CNC machines, plasma cutting tables, and robotic welding. And we added a new Akuma mill in Gillette. The new Hoffler gear grinder and vertical lathe in the Phoenix shop will allow us to work on the largest gears and components in the world. We hired engineers to speed up the process of innovation. We became more efficient, and we learned how to streamline our work. Instead of tackling a dozen jobs at once, we worked on hundreds. Instead of hiring workers from the bars with a promise of a few days' pay, we recruited people who wanted to make L&H their career. We bought 2 companies in Arizona to help us reach into the mines of the Southwest. And we opened local shops in Mexico and Chile. We bought a hydraulic and chrome plating shop in Sheridan, Wyoming. We also added key contributors like David Reyna, Hilo Canamar, and Pablo Velasquez. We also made mistakes along the way. We did not understand other cultures very well, and our partnerships in South Africa and India quickly soured. We also missed the potential for growth right in front of our eyes. It was our nephew, Jason Persifield, who saw the opportunity to develop field service into a powerful leading edge of our identity. Starting in 2007, Jason and a small group of young tradesmen grew our field service division into a juggernaut of expertise and developed an aggressive, can-do culture within the company. Our field crews thrived on solving the most difficult problems. They cross-trained to develop broad expertise. They worked in the most severe conditions, and they worked nonstop until the job was done. The field crews provided an essential service to our customers. Everywhere they worked, they spread our reputation for quality and innovation. The success of Jason's field service strategy gave us the confidence to bid on bigger, even more complex jobs. In 2012, we signed a contract to upgrade the undercarriage of the NASA Transporter, the largest land transport machine in the world. L&H was already a worldwide expert in the design and manufacturing of mine shovel undercarriages, but the scale of the NASA project was beyond anything we'd ever done. True to our ethic, the L&H field crew delivered under budget and ahead of schedule, helping to launch the next generation of space exploration. Success fed on success. We rebuilt a 50-year-old taconite bucket wheel loader for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. The project required enormous creativity and engineering skills to remanufacture 80% of the machine's original parts. While Jason built field service, Dustin Roush transformed sales. He reinforced Jeff's philosophy of building relationships and selling value and quality. We're just a bunch of Wyoming cowboys who love to fix things, he told his customers. We sent him to the Canadian oil sands in 2012, and he delivered spectacularly, with long-term shovel maintenance contracts that account for almost 20% of L&H's annual revenue. With their success, the transition to our third generation of family management had begun. Jason is now General Manager and Chief Operating Officer over all L&H shops. With Jeff's retirement, Dustin became Vice President of Sales and Marketing. The decline of coal has pushed us to explore new markets in mineral processing, wind, and hydroelectric dams. New markets led us to invest in new technology, and new technologies reinforce the culture of innovation and collaboration. The move into mineral processing led us to a new acquisition. Innotech Solutions opened the door to digital strategies for the control and monitoring of crushers and other machines. My son Gage, another member of the third generation, is leading the movement into the digital and AI transformation. Third generation has risen to the operational management, and I'm the old man of the company. We're on the cutting edge of technology, and now I've turned my focus to the relationship between our unique abilities and our culture. How do we continue to grow a company where creative people can find a lifetime of fulfillment, where collaboration is encouraged, and where difficult challenges inspire us rather than intimidate us? How do we build a culture that can thrive in the new industrial economy of the 21st century, where skilled tradesmen work in the space program, alternative energy, and advanced industrial markets? Today, we have a vision that Dad could never have dreamed possible. At L&H, we transform the machines that transform the future.